Welcome to our library studio here as part of the Yahowah blog. I am here with our guest co-host, Wookie, and we are ready to dive back into the 89th Mizmowr. The 89th Mizmowr, of course, for those who have listened to this program over a period of time, you know that it is my favorite. There's no psalm, no proverb, no prophecy, no Torah chapter that I find as inspiring, as enlightening, as affirming, as prophetically important, really, as the 89th. And one of the things we have learned quite recently is that the author of the 89th is not a irrelevant character. He is Ethan Ha-Ezraki. He was inserted into this position by Yahweh for this particular purpose. This Mizmowr was a collaborative effort. It's also true that Ethan plays a significant role in the introduction of the Mizmowr and says some things that are really interesting. And there's some things that he says about Dowd, about himself, and mostly about Yahweh. And then there is a two-statement opening salvo from Yahweh regarding his beloved son, followed by more insights from Ethan Ha-Ezraki. And then we reach the point where it is really from the 18th, 19th statement through very close to the end. It is all in Yahweh's voice, and it is profoundly important, the things that he has to say. They're irrefutable, they're non-transferable, they're emphatic. And this psalm completely and without reservation obliterates the religions of Judaism and Christianity. There is literally no room whatsoever for either religion in light of what God says about David. And so we'll jump right back into it. I do want you to know that there is more to this than meets the eye, and that Dowd is a very complex individual. He is exceptionally bright, quite articulate, definitely passionate, absolutely courageous, but he also has some rough edges, lots of them. And this was delivered during the roughest patch of his life. He was so far from what he could have been, should have been at this point, that he and Yahweh were not even talking. God's communications with him were all indirect, as, for example, in this particular case, Yahweh revealed his sentiments toward Dowd, and the person named as Ethan Ha-Ezraki delivered them. And I think that he was around for a good portion of Dowd's life. I think he appeared initially as Obed Edom, and that he had some role in his tutelage of Solomon, before Solomon also went the way of his father and became way too interested in women, not for the right reasons, not for their brains or contribution or character, but for, well, you can imagine what else he might have been interested in. And this was the same problem with Dowd, particularly with Bathsheba. He did not choose wives or lovers well. It was not his strength. And he tripped badly over his choice for Bathsheba, who was not good for him, for Israel, for the covenant relationship, or for anything else. And this was a wake-up call for him. And now the good news is we prevailed. We got his attention. Dowd came back online. He accepted who he was. He realized what was laid before him, that he would be the Passover lamb, that he would fulfill Chag Matzah. He would take our guilt into Sha'uwl on Matzah to make us and he not guilty. So it was a big responsibility that he was accepting, and he would come back as a result of as king of the world. And what's remarkable is that Yahweh was so certain that we would prevail with this song that he actually goes right back to the firmness of his position with Dowd. that Dowd will be the one through whom he will create, literally cut the covenant relationship, that Dowd will be his co-worker going forward on all the things that need to be accomplished through the Mow'ed Miqra'ey and returning as king to govern the millennial Shabbat. He is 100% back in with Dowd, which means that God would not have made these statements if he was not assured that this remedy would work. And so, while it is tense and while I want to bring it to you in the full flavor of what God said, I also want you to know that we prevailed. The plan played out as it was articulated. So in the third statement is the first time that God speaks directly to us. It's going to be the primary thrust of the Mizmowr before very long. But after an introduction by Ethan Ha-Izraki, which means that he is a perpetually deployed individual, that he is inserted in and out of the timeline when needed to make certain that God's people and plan stay on pace. And that's precisely what his name means. That is what it conveys to us. That's what should be understood about him. He was also the author of 30 of the 31 Proverbs and 5 songs, this being the most dramatic, most important of them. So God speaks to us in first person. In the third statement, it reads, I have established cutting through separation, karat. Karat's a very important verb in Hebrew. When God speaks of his covenant and the inception of his covenant, he always uses karat. And karat is not the same word as create. That would be bara. It is not the same word as made, asha, the word that would communicate that he has engaged in or acted upon. He used karat, and karat literally means to cut. Now, we would say in English, we cut a deal, right? I'll cut you in on an agreement. So it's similar from that point of view. Karat is also used in connection with the circumcision. So it means to create by cutting off, by establishing through separation. So with karat, you know that this arrangement that is being established and cut literally is a line in the sand, a chisel mark in stone, and you are one side or the other of it. You're either in or you're out. There is no straddling the line. There is no moving back and forth. You're in or you're out. So I have established cutting through separation. I have created making a resolution by cutting off, as in the case of circumcision, a solemn agreement between the parties with stipulations, responsibilities, and benefits. And the thing that I have established cutting through separation is the Beryth covenant for the family. And he says, I have done so through my Bachyr, Ani, which would be through my chosen one, on behalf of the individual that I have personally decided upon, that I have preferred, that I have selected under the auspices of free will, the one I favor for a special relationship and affections, from Bachyr, to choose, to decide, and from Bachan, to test, examine, and scrutinize. Now that's a big statement, that the covenant has been established through someone, one individual that God chose. Guess who God didn't choose? Jesus. Guess who God didn't choose? Bar Kokhba. Guess who God didn't choose? Muhammad. Guess who God did choose? Dowd. Should be all there wrote of those 3 religions. They're all gone with that one statement, because God's going to name the person that he chose as Dowd, and the covenant is the essence of the Towrah. You look at the book Bereshith, after he gets through creation and the flood, it goes directly to the formation, that whole narrative with Abraham and Sarah to conceive the covenant relationship, and it goes some 12, 14 chapters through the initial book. So you have creation, you have the experience in Eden, you have the flood. Each of those, by the way, mirror the covenant itself. Then you have the covenant, and then you have how the covenant plays out through Yishak and through Jacob and the sons of Yisrael. So that is the entire story of Bereshith. It's Genesis. It's all about the covenant. It's the heart and soul of the Torah. It's the cornerstone of the Torah. Now, the covenant is more than just the central piece of the Torah. It is the only way to God. Now, God has a specific path. It's Pesach, Matsah, Bachyr, Shavuot, Towrah, Kippurim, and Sukkah, with the first three providing the benefits of the covenant. So the only way that you can participate in Pesach and have it be beneficial to you is to be in the covenant. And if you're a man, you have to be circumcised, just to emphasize this point. And the guilt that's carried away on matzah is that of the covenant's children. And firstborn children means that we become part of the covenant family on Bachyr. So literally, it is the covenant's benefits that are being delivered through the first three Mow'ed Miqra'ey, Pesach, Matsah, and Bachyr. This means that Dowd fulfilled them when God says, I have cut through separation, having established the Beryth covenant for the family through my Bachyr, chosen one. And I have sworn an oath, which I will affirm this promise 7 times over, because there are 7 Mow'ed Miqra'ey, to Dowd. Ebed Any, my authorized agent and co-worker who serves with me. That is, again, that's all she wrote. There's no other option. It's the complete obliteration of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam with that statement. There can be no co-working Jesus. There can be no Savior Jesus. There can be no new covenant, and there can be no covenant that is established with anyone other than with Dowd. And you can't transfer this because God said it's to Dowd. He didn't say it was to whomever you want it to be. He didn't say it's to Jesus. He didn't say it's to Bar Kokhba. He didn't say it was to Muhammad. He said it was to Dowd. Now, if you want to pretend that God is so stupid, so old, so senile that he doesn't know the name of his coworker, his authorized agent, he doesn't know the name of the person he chose, of all the people that have ever existed, the single person most important to him, the one that he chose above all others, you want to say he's not smart enough to know that man's name? And yet he's smart enough to fabricate DNA to create 2 trillion galaxies with a couple of 100 billion stars apiece. And you want to tell me you don't think he knows his son's name? That's what you're going with, Christian? Is that the best you got? Certainly there's no place that says everything I promised to Dowd is transferable to somebody else. In fact, it says exactly the opposite in this very psalm. It says that it's to Dowd, period, end of conversation. He is the one. He is the only one. And should everything that God has to say about Dowd not materialize, and God says, then I will not only have been shown a liar, but I will have failed. Even worse. So I have established cutting through separation, the Beryth covenant for the family through my Bachyr, chosen one. I have sworn an oath that I will affirm this promise 7 times over to Dowd, Ebed Any, my authorized agent and co-worker who serves with me. Furthermore, as an eternal witness to the restoring testimony, I will prepare and establish your offspring, and that which you sow, you would be Dowd. In addition, I have constructed for your throne and for your seat of honor on behalf of all generations. All of this has been established for Dowd. He is therefore the returning king, is he not? For all time. He is the one who fulfilled Pesach, Matsah, and Beryth, because that's how the covenant's benefits were established. He is the one through whom God chose to work. He is God's chosen one. He is the one. So Judaism is wrong. It was established by Rabbi Akiba promoting Bar Kokhba as the Messiah. Wrong. He lied. Christianity is wrong. It was conceived with Paul writing a letter to the Galatians, which was the first time he introduced the concept of an Iousu Christou, an imaginary Messiah. Nope. Wrong. Sorry. There's no option here. If you want to be informed and rational, you have a singular option with this opening statement from God. It's bam, right in your face. I have established, cutting through separation, the Beryth, the covenant, through my Bachyr, chosen one. I have sworn an oath, and I will affirm this promise 7 times over to Dowd, my authorized agent and co-worker who serves with me. Furthermore, as an eternal witness to the restoring testimony, I will prepare and establish your offspring and that which you sow. In addition, I have constructed your throne in your seat of honor on behalf of all generations, all dwelling places, all time. Pause now and contemplate the implications. Mizmowr, Psalm 89, 3 and 4. Yahweh's Adolam, eternal and restoring witness, is found throughout his Towrah, his Nabiim, prophets, and Mizmowr, Psalms, as well as the Sha'uwl, Proverbs. God revealed everything we need to know about him, his family, and the means to be part of it. In addition to this, Yahweh interjected Ebed Any, serving mankind as Ethan Ha-Ezraki. He was initially deployed and prepared with these logical expressions, but he has returned as Yadah, one who knows. He is the Nakar, the observant foreigner. He is the Choter stem of the tree of knowledge. He is here to serve this door generation as an restoring witness. So while the 25,000 pages of amplified translations and resulting insights available at Yadah.com for free, and the 10,000 hours of radio programs and now Yahowah blogs are all a fairly worthy achievement of the product of the last 25 years of my life in collaboration with Yahowah. Considering all of the practice, well, I suspect I should be better at this by now, but I'm still learning. And hopefully I'll continue at this pace and continue to learn. Well, I'd like to do so at least for the next 1,000 years before we conclude the celebration, this opportunity of Chag Sukkah. Fortunately, like every covenant member, I will improve with experience and maturity. And of course, we have an unlimited access to both of these things. And, I was talking, we have Perry here now. He has actually moved to the U.S. Virgin Islands, going to be our neighbor and beginning on a series of projects. Delighted to have him here. And we were talking, and Rich was here for our lunch meeting. And the fact is that all of us who are working with Yahweh are ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances. And I think Yahweh may choose slightly better than ordinary. He has aptitudes and attitudes that he likes to exploit. But the fact is that we're all here to be examples. We need to show what God's looking for, what he expects from us, how to model that kind of behavior, what it is like to be in a loving relationship, what it is like to work together as a team, what it is like to scrutinize his testimony, to be particularly observant, to be aware of what he has said, to contemplate all of the implications of it. to exercise good judgment regarding it, to respond to him, to make a contribution to the relationship, and of course, to even go beyond all of that and to show that when we, because we are human, make mistakes along the way, we can learn from them and grow as a result of them. We can demonstrate our trustworthiness by correcting the record and benefiting all of us from what we have learned. When we stumble and fall, we can show that we're resilient. We get up, that God can depend upon us, and so can you. So while not 1 in a billion Christians recognizes that God has preemptively launched 24 broadsides against Christianity and Judaism already, and we're still in the 4th verse. Clearly, Yahowah was aware that Paul would predicate the dismissal of the Towrah on the notion of Zera, seed, when associated with Abraham, and he calling it singular. He said, therefore, we can bypass the inscription of the Towrah, in addition to the 1,000 years of Yahuwdym between Abraham and Dowd, and the 2,000 years of Israelites and the covenants thereafter, because it was Abraham's seed that would receive blessings. That was the basis, the foundation of his thesis. However, seed is always intended to be plural. Offspring is many. God's quite clear in that regard, so he misappropriated the term. And here now, we're hearing that it's the seed, the offspring of Dowd, that is going to be the beneficiaries here for all time. And, Dowd was, 400 years after the Towrah was revealed? Therefore, the very foundation of Paul's letter to the Galatians, which is the foundational floor, the basis of what Christianity was conceived upon, is a lie. Yeah, so is the rest of the letters that he wrote, so that shouldn't be a big surprise. So the seed Dowd has sown will be cultivated. It will be harvested, particularly on Sha'uwl and Towrah. Those who will be taken home during the 4th and 5th Miqra'ey are covenant and therefore Dowd's offspring. This is affirmed by the realization that Sha'uwl is actually a Bokurim harvest. So as we discovered when contemplating the prophecy about homes, who builds them and who lives them, that's found in 2 Samuel 7, Yahowah told his son that he would establish his throne forever, the kingdom of Dowd forevermore. And now we know that Yahowah himself will be building the palatial residence in which our king will reside. Can imagine that it will be stately. More than this, even when addressing that which will be everlasting, God spoke of the construction of Dowd's seat of honor, using the perfect conjugation, affirming that it had already been constructed. And indeed it has, because, his throne, as I've shared many times, is the Kaporeth. It's the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. It's why I like to see depictions of the Ark of the Covenant done such that they reflect the room that it was originally housed in, where you had the cherubim in the corner. So the body was in the corner, and they had a wing down one wall, and perpendicular to it, the back wall, would be their other wing. And then the other cherubim was on the other corner, one wing, going this way, the other wing going that way. That's exactly the same thing that's modeled on the Ark of the Covenant. You're going to see, if this was the edge here of my seat, a wing that would go forward, kind of like an armrest, really. And then the other one that goes halfway across the back. And then it's met on the other side with a wing that goes halfway across the back and one that goes forward. So you can literally sit in it. It's kind of like you would have, like, this is a chair with arms. It's below the table, so you can't see it. But I think you could probably hear me punch it there. It's the same thing. That's what we're going to have. It's going to be the Kaporeth. It's the mercy seat of the Ark of the Covenant. That's going to be his throne. And he's not going to be sitting on his throne a lot. God doesn't do prestige, pomp and ceremony that way. But what he is saying is that his seat of honor, his position, will be everlasting. The kingdom of Dowd will never end. Kishe is also a loaded term. It speaks of covering and concealing because that's the basis of kafar, which is the basis of Yom Kippurim, which is the Day of Reconciliations. And talking about, so that's covering. The concealment is on Matzah, when Dowd took our guilt and took it into Sha'uwl, which is equivalent to a black hole, to deposit it there, never to be seen again. That would be concealing it, would it not? So that part of it is appropriate. And then we also learn that Keseh speaks of a full moon and talks about the things that take place on a full moon and the blowing of the shofar on the new moon. So the new moon would represent, for example, Towrah always takes place on a new moon, first day of the 7th month. But you have 4 of the Mow'ed Miqra'ey that take place on a full moon. The 3 that Dowd fulfilled, Pesach, Matsah, and Verbatim, are always on a full moon. And so is Sukkah, because they were on the 14th, 15th, and 16th day of a lunar month, with the lunar month being 14 and a half days long. So 29 days in a lunar month, 14 and a half days in the cycle. So 14, 15 is when the full moon occurs. 16 is pretty close to a full moon. Then you're looking at Sukkah, which would also, on the 15th day of a new month, would also be a full moon. So it speaks of the full moon and the new moon. The new moon would be on Towrah. Those are the most important days relative to the relationship between the sun and the moon. God speaks of them in the first chapter of Beryth in Genesis 1 on the 4th day, speaking how the lesser luminary as the moon will reflect the greater luminary, the sun's light, as signs of these Moedim, these restoring witnesses to the eternal testimony that are the 7 meeting times we have with Yahowah. So there is a connection to the moon, a connection to covering, a connection to concealing. That would be Matzah and Kippurim, as well as the mercy seat being the prestigious location of Dowd's throne, and it existing evermore. So this is really quite a statement. It, of course, is the very thing that Obed Edom assisted Dowd in relocating into Jerusalem. And that was right before his meltdown, but Obed Edom played an extremely important role. Obed Edom is the same man that later, much later, 3,000 years later, Isaiah says that the man from Edom, dressed in red, coming out of the wine vat, treading in there with Isaiah himself, will save many. So this is a reappearing character, Obed Edom, just like Ethan is Rocky, is a reoccurring player by basis of his name alone. So lots of things to ponder there. So in spite of Yahweh's unequivocal declaration, and it is certainly unequivocal in this regard, there are billions who carry around a book containing this prophecy who still believe that Jesus will claim Dowd's throne and prove God a liar. That's pretty stupid. And then there are millions of Jews who are not smart enough to know the name of their returning Messiah and King, even though God gave it to them. It's a wonder Yahweh despises religion and will exterminate the religious prior to his return. He must. While ignorance is contagious here on earth, according to the next statement, that isn't the case in heaven. And so as we proceed, after listening to God extol Dowd's role in our lives, the following assessment is from Ethan as Rocky. And having spent considerable time in Shamaim, at this point, he had spent about 2,400 years with Yahweh and Shamaim. He probably had a couple of insertions, one notable around the time of Moshe and the Exodus. But otherwise, he's been mostly in Shamaim ever since God chose him and took him there as Chinook. And so he knows his way around Shamayim. He knows exactly who Yahweh is, what he is perceived to be, what he has promised to do. When he speaks of Yahweh, he knows of whom he speaks. And that's why he's so forthright in this regard. And he's going to tell you two things about God that are essential for you to know. He's already brought them up, and he will underscore them. So he is aware that also, being in Shamayim, he has witnessed the future. He knew exactly what Dowd would do. He knew that this solution that God had conceived, when implemented, would prevail, and that Dowd would return to the relationship with Yahweh. Their lines of communication would open back up. Their love for one another would abound, and that Dowd would indeed continue to be Yahweh's chosen one, and that he would establish the covenant. And Yahweh made it all possible, and heaven knows it. The text reads, the spiritual realms knowingly express and they appreciate. Yadah, they are aware of and they understand so as to extol, properly attributing and expressing gratitude. It is from Yadah, which means to know, to recognize, and to acknowledge your wonderful and marvelous contribution and your miraculous accomplishment. Now, this was interesting in that it was singular. It's Pele, Ata. Both are singular. So your masculine singular, that would be Ata. Amazing achievement, masculine singular. So your wonderful and marvelous contribution and your miraculous accomplishment is something the spiritual realms of the heaven know and express. They appreciate. So God's talking about one thing here, and it's an extraordinary fulfillment which distinguishes Yahweh, in addition to your trustworthiness and reliability, your emunah, in the company and community of the set apart. So that means that in Shamayim, there are people that are set apart unto Yahweh. These would be individuals like, Abraham and Sarah, Yishak and Jacob would all be in that company. Noach and his family would be in that company. Obviously, Dowd will be here shortly. And so this is the company of the set apart. These are the Kodeshim, those who are separated and dedicated with essential divine qualities and status. So the first thing we should be thinking of, that if your intent is to be among those who get to visit or better earn the right to live in Shamayim, well, it's helpful to know what the current inhabitants think about Yahweh's miraculous contribution to the covenant through Dowd. And I think that he has already answered and told us precisely, what is that marvelous contribution. What did he say? That he had cut the covenant with his chosen one, with Dowd, with whom he made this promise, his co-worker. So cutting of the covenant, that requires the fulfillment of Chag Matsah. Chag Matsah is one event that encapsulates Pesach, Matsah, and Bachyr. That's that one event. So he's answered that question. And according to heaven, the fulfillment of Chag Matsah in collaboration with Dowd is the greatest achievement ever. So I think it's particularly interesting because their appreciation is directed towards the singular Pele achievement. And as a result, there can only be one of two related things. Either heaven is celebrating the restoration of the son's relationship with the father, which at this point is a fait accompli. They know it in advance because of the tenor of this there is no place where God said, boy, I hope we prevail, or this is what I want again. This is what I'd like. I want to have a great relationship with my son. No, it's a fait accompli all the way through. It's emphatic. So it can't be that. Therefore, it's only one thing, which is, it's not this miskil that is the identity of that one miraculous event. It is Dowd's and Yahowah's collaboration in the fulfillment of Pesach and Matsah. It would be in this way that God demonstrated his covenant promises, showing that they were reliable and that he could be implicitly trusted. Those who have done so now reside in Shamayim, living in God's company. That is why they expressed that previous sentiment. Therefore, the residents of Shamayim, heaven, all know and appreciate Yahowah. So, shouldn't we here on earth? One Pele, marvelous achievement by God, is viewed as Pele, particularly wonderful. Yahowah's Pele, most marvelous contribution to our well-being, was facilitated through Dowd. Keeping track, the 28th statement would be the Pele, most distinguishing act of God is the creation of the covenant, which he achieved through his chosen one and co-worker. 29 would be, with his Pele, amazing achievement, Yahowah affirmed that he is Emunah, trustworthy and dependable. He delivered on his promise. And 30, in Shamayim, heaven, God is accompanied by the Kodeshim, the set apart, and they are there for that reason, that they're set apart. All right, so as a result, Ethan makes the following statement by asking a question. By contrast, who, as a speck of dust in the skies of the material realm, is as valuable as and can be compared or equated to Yahowah? He's saying there is even a speck of sand, of dust in the skies, and the entire material realm and all of the galaxies and stars that can be compared to Yahowah. Who is similar to, or even remotely resembles or thinks like Yahowah among the children of the Almighty? Yet God's thoughts are so far above ours, and the very mentality of God is just so radically different than all of the gods that men have made in their own image. He just literally has nothing in common with religious gods, including the God of Judaism, Christianity, and especially Islam. Now, the universe is composed, as you know, and I've shared, of at least 2 trillion galaxies. They average hundreds of billions of stars in each. Not that we can fathom anything on this scale, but for reference, Ethan is saying that false gods like Jesus, Hashem, or Allah are 1 to the 0 power compared to the 10 to the 57th power atoms. 10 with 57 zeros after it, atoms. And the average star alone, multiplied by 4 times 10 to the 11th power stars in a galaxy, times 2 to the 10th to the 12th power of these massive gatherings of solar objects in the universe. That's infinitely less than a grain of sand compared to every beach on Earth or a drop of water, in contrast to the Pacific Ocean. But Ethan isn't saying that Yahowah is big, but instead that God organized, prepared, thought through, responded in a systematic way, in addition to being a great storyteller. And what's more, Yahowah has a family. That makes him very rich. No one, the 31st point so far is that no one is a rock comparable to Yahowah. The 32nd is false gods are akin to a shakak, specks of dust. 33, Yahowah is a rock, enormously valuable, prepared, and orderly. 34, Yahowah is Dhamma, thinking, and his responses differ from ours. And 35, Yahowah has Beni, children. Now, from Ha-Ezraki's perspective, properly establishing Yahowah's credentials is actually vital to appreciating these prophecies regarding Dowd. he continues, therefore, to share what I've come to know and respect about Yahweh, something that you should embrace as well. God, the Almighty, is highly regarded, well respected, inspiring, and awesome. He is Aratz. He is considered awe-inspiring and magnificent in the council of those with whom he confides, earning their confidence. Basod. Within the intimate fellowship where there is a foundation of trust, discretion, an enclave guided by proper instruction and grounded in mutual reliance. Of the set apart one, this Kodeshim again, of those who are separated and devoted, tremendously great, while inspiring reverence and respect as Almighty God for all who are surrounding him. Mizmowr, Psalm 89:7. Apart from the source, they would just be words on the page, of course. Reverberations in the air. But when the source is known and appreciated, the message becomes irrefutable, indeed essential. And so while we in the covenant have come to know Yahweh this way, we've had, 25 years now of uninterrupted study. Of only half days. We only spend 12 to 14 days, 6 to 7 days a week doing this. So we're putting in half days. But we have also many more prophets to bolster our understanding. And keep in mind, the initial recipients of this Maskil, the primary target of it was Dowd. And at the time of its inscription, he needed their reassurance that Ethan's prior 2,400 years with Yahweh brought to the occasion. Ethan's first life began 600 years after the expulsion from Eden. So of the insights being delivered by Ethan, my favorite thus far is that God is sowed. He is around those closest to him. This means that Yahweh confides in the set apart. He shares insights. He seeks to know our thoughts. And in this way, he inspires confidence in us. I mean, if God's asking us for our view on a particular subject, if he's telling us some of his innermost thoughts, if he's sharing some of his motivations and what he'd like to accomplish, and he's, looking for our response to it, confiding really in us, doesn't that say a lot about who we are? Now, clearly, he's saying that about those who are surrounding him in Shamaim. So they have already gone through this process of the tenfold empowerment of Bokurim times a doubling of another tenfold empowerment again through Shabuah. So, they're what we are times 10 to maybe the 100th power, if you will, in terms of their capacity. So they're a little easier for God to confide in than we would be, pretty limited here in our 3D existence. But that's what we have to look forward to. God sowed, confiding, and those that surround him. We're not going to just have what we have now, which is God teaching us and protecting us, enlightening us, enabling us and empowering us, but God treating us as worthy conversationalists, co-explorers, partners. I mean, it's an amazing kind of thing. It's also reassuring that next to recognizing Yahweh's awesome power, Ethan wants us to know that he has vast resources to share. Yeah. And you might think, okay, well, it's a really big universe, 2 trillion galaxies, each with a couple of 100 billion solar systems, each with planets. That's a pretty good inheritance. You can imagine you're inheriting the entire Earth. Well, that would be pretty swell. But the Earth is just one planet around one star in one galaxy, when there are 2 trillion galaxies and a couple of 100 billion stars and multiple planets. It's okay. That's a lot. That's really a lot. And that's nothing. Not compared. That's what we can just perceive. That's the universe is so much bigger than that. And what God has to give is so much more valuable to that. How about eternal life? How about being adopted into his family, being individually enriched in power? We were talking again during our lunch meeting today with Perry and with Rich. This realization that there is so much that separates us right now between us and God. God's a 7-dimensional being. Here we are stuck in 3 dimensions. And if God were to take us as we are and liberate us into the 4th dimension more fully in time, it would instantly kill us. Now, if you wanted to become immortal, liberated in time in the 4th dimension, as you currently are, it would kill you. It would be painful. The sounds, the sights, the options, all of it would be just too overwhelming for your brain to even be able to process, your senses to process. The only way I can help to give you some perception of it is imagine that you were in the flatland of the cell for a cartoon or a drawing. My lovely picture behind me. I love it because, well, my beloved friend painted it, and every time I look at it, I cherish our relationship. But it's the old tree and the sea, representing the 2 things that sort of define who I am. And you look at that and you say, well, it shows a 3-dimensional scene, but it's 2 dimensions. And if you were in flatland here, you would have no concept of what's here or here, and what's here and here would expand the opportunities, the whole realm of what you can experience infinitely. There's an infinite number of these when you go from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. Now imagine going to 4. 4 alone would do us in. And to be equivalent to God, we have to be taken from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 and into the 7th dimension. And that is what he will do when we reach the point that he can confide in us. He's not going to take anybody through that process, make them immortal, adding that degree of power until he's certain that we can be trusted, that we're properly observant, that we are appropriately responsive, and the most importantly, we can be trusted. So that is our goal for ourselves, and of course for all of you to understand that's what God is looking for. God himself, he's got that in spades. God is Amunah. He is trustworthy. He is reliable. He is dependable. He has integrity. He is not going to change. What he has said, you can take to the bank. It is absolutely true. So Yahowah, God of the vast array of spiritual implements, who and what is comparable to your awesome power and your extraordinary treasures, your strength, your value, your riches, assessing God's credibility and what he has to offer from Chesan, to be treasured and to offer something of great value, which are all around you, Yah, including your unwavering commitment to the truth and unwavering reliability. So what Ethan is saying is, okay, universe big, you get a large share of the universe. You can have 1,000 galaxies if you would like them, maybe even 1 billion of them per covenant member. Swell. That's not what's the most magnificent. Eternal life, enrichment, empowerment, being able to spend time around the creator of the universe, the author of life, a father who can genuinely be trusted, being loved, appreciated for who you are, having God confide in you. I mean, those are far greater treasures, right? just being around somebody that's consistently honest. So in a world replete with gods by all manner of names and depictions, there is only one true God, and his name is Yahweh. Unlike the disingenuous men who have conceived the impostors, Yah has integrity, and he can be validated. You can prove. He proved his existence. We can verify it. And in this proclamation, we find Ethan so comfortable around the Almighty. He refers to him as Yah. In my personal conversations with Yahweh, that's my preference too. I almost always call him Yah. Maybe it's a habit born of familiarity over the past 5,400 years. This spoke of the Saba. They are the heavenly host. They are comprised of Malachim, spiritual messengers. They serve as extensions of Yahweh's influence in our three-dimensional world. As a seven-dimensional being, all of Yahweh will not even fit into the six-dimensional universe, much less 5 dimensions, much less 4, much less the 3 that we find ourselves into. So God, the totality of God, cannot be, as Paul wrote, in a man. That's absurd. I can't even fit in this planet, can't fit in this solar system, can't fit in this galaxy, can't fit in the universe. Sorry, God is that big. He's a 7-dimensional being. It's just like a 3-dimensional being. I can't enter that painting. No matter how much I may want to, it's impossible for me to enter that painting. It's impossible for God, who is 4 dimensions beyond ours, to enter 3 dimensions. He can use implements just like I could use a Crayola and mess up my friend's picture, or a Mark Salot or something, and I could draw on it. And I can speak to it and I can move it with my finger, but I can't enter it. And I was in the same situation. He has Malachim, spiritual messengers who can interact in our world, and they do. He has his Ruach spirit that can empower and enable people of his choosing, and he does. He has a Nefesh soul that he can use as an avatar when he wishes to do so, and he has in the past. And God, of course, has these words that he has inspired that can filter into our heads and permeate our lives and shape who we are and our perceptions of him, which have great power, great influence. So as a 7-dimensional being, Yahweh's chasen, powers, and treasures are infinitely beyond anything, of course, we can imagine in 3.5 dimensions beneath him. And yet God's most valuable gift to man really is his emunah, his honesty and reliability. It's the first thing the religious steal from him, by the way. Doesn't do them any good. You can't steal God's honesty and have that work for you. So the 36th point here is that Yahweh is Aratz, highly regarded. 37, God inspires Sod, confidence. 38, boy, that's really true. I love that fact that God does. He inspires confidence. The more time you spend around him, the more confident you are of who he is and of your relationship with him. 38, Yahweh Sod confides, and the Kadishim, those set apart, and Shamayim. 39, something it's so exciting. I get antsy just waiting for, can you imagine, because at this point, I'd be happy just to be, a fly on the wall in Shamayim. But to think that we're going to be so close that God's going to say, hey, I think we have an opportunity over here. What would you like to do? You want to take it from here? They're my thoughts. What are yours? What a wonderful thing you experience that would be. Goosebump time. The Kadishim set apart are Yareh, respectful, and they revere Yah. They are found Shabib, surrounding God. 40. Yahweh orchestrates a Saba, a vast array of spiritual messengers. 41. God is Kamo, incomparable. 42. Yahweh is a Chasen, awesomely powerful and abundantly rich. And by the way, he wants to give it all away. 43. God's Shabib encapsulates us in Emunah, unwavering reliability and trustworthiness. Shabib surrounds us with his Chasen, strength and values. empowering and enriching us. Pretty neat deal. I'm ready. So after sharing what he has learned, this would be what Ethan has learned over the millennia about Yahweh, particularly his enduring love and steadfast commitment to the truth, and interjecting what God had to say about Dowd, which was powerful, being the enabler of the covenant. That's stout. His chosen one, of course, and his co-worker. Ethan decided to share something of himself, revealing how God intends to use him going forward. Now, the reason for this prophetic insertion at this point in the narrative is to earn the king's trust. In another life, Ha is Rocky, will be Yadah, the Nekar, the Choder, and the Adam of Parah. And he will put it all on the line in service to Yahweh, to Yahuwdym, to Dowd, to the Beryth, on behalf of Yisrael, the Towrah, and its Mow'ed. In other words, he can not only emphasize with the king, empathizing with the king, which is important, just like Dowd, well, Ethan, under those rules, he has skin in the game. And that makes a big difference. You know, when Nathan, who was very bright, prophet, spoke for Yahweh, spoke to Dowd. Yeah, Dowd listened, but then he went on with his life. He had no influence on him. Dowd was one of his subjects. And even as a prophet, he was just one of his subjects. But Ethan, Rocky, has been out of heaven many times. And he's going to play a lead role in supporting Dowd. He was able to point out to Dowd all the times, all the things they had done previously and all the things they would do in the future. And, you know, if you're somebody that has skin in the game, then you will get the attention of the person you're talking to, no matter what level of life they're at. So Ethan Rocky wants the king and the world to know that God communicates by painting word pictures. Remember, we read about Ethan Rocky and the fact that he would write 30 of the 31 Proverbs. Now, some, of course, are more intriguing than others. This one is as vivid as it is prophetic. It says, you convey, he's speaking to Yahweh, mashal, portraits, comprised of words, when exercising your authority. Atah mashal. You share proverbs, which are readily remembered as word pictures, demonstrating how to lead, how to govern, how to establish dominion. Gloriously triumphing with the surging sea, agitating by majestically rising or raising the illustrious and reoccurring force of the one from the west, who can be abrasive. Ba Geluth, Ha Yam. By the abrasion associated with the raging Westerner, serving as a metaphor for a boisterous and aggressive goy, from Ga'ah, to rise up effectively and grow, productive and victorious, by lifting up his rolling rocks among the turbulent waves as a witness, Ba Nasa Galam Hu, by bearing his influential stones, raising his testimony, demarking the boundaries of the agreement, and carrying the current of his relentless seas as foundations. I'm sure God was laughing as he was inspiring these words. I even get a chuckle out of it. You laud and extol them with, that would be the rocks, the stones, with exuberant statements, commending their value, eliminating the noise, calming the chaos, and quieting the situation through them. You assert which is factually accurate about them while smoothing out the rough edges and ending the crisis while showing restraint and remaining moral. Peel perfect, second person, masculine singular, Mizmowr Psalm 89:9. And I want to tell you, that one, you better put on your thinking cap if you're going to get to the beginning and through and the end of that, and you have a coherent thought and you know what God's talking about in terms of abrasive rocks, crags, if you will, in the sea, and who the sea is, where this person is coming from, why Yahweh is lauding these abrasive rocks that are tumbling in the sea, and therefore coming up against his land. What in the world is he talking about? This is pretty.
I know a guy.
I do too, but I tell you what, you have to think this one through. So you convey mashal portraits. We already know that when introducing Ethan Haj Rocky, God said that he wrote 30 of the 31 mashal word portraits. We got to this, back to this again because of the final word picture, the 31st mashal. And so God's saying this is how God likes to work through these word pictures. And he doesn't just exercise a manner of painting these pictures so we can understand. He leads through them. He shares these proverbs because they're easily remembered and because he can demonstrate how to govern through them. So what follows is a word picture. All right. So now what your mind should be, God is painting a picture here of something that he wants to convey, which if we're paying attention, we can come to understand. Okay. He then says that what he's speaking of is glorious. Now, there's not a lot of things that God's going to say is glorious, but he says this is glorious. And he says it's triumphant, which means it's going to prevail. And he's doing it with the surging sea, agitating by majestically raising the illustrious and reoccurring force of the one for the west who can be abrasive. Well, that's quite a word picture there. What does the sea mean when God speaks of the sea versus the land? Goy. God's going to find someone I was telling again the fellows during our working lunch today. We had marvelous lamb chops, by the way, today for lunch. Too bad you weren't here. Nana and Nana, they were on our outdoor patio. They were really, really spectacular. Perry, his first day here, went off, bought a computer today, and on the way back, picked up lunch, and it was good. So anyway, we were talking about the nature of how God succeeds in part because he's willing to share credit. They always say there's no limit to what a person can achieve if they are willing to share credit. Well, God is glorious at it. God can be, in the case of raising this the agitation of the sea and being effective through this word picture, God is responsible for 99.999% of the benefit of this. He's directing it. He is enabling it. But that's not the way God sees it. It's so few people that are willing to work with him, to be responsive to him, just to go along and be used by him. He thinks it's glorious when somebody contributes. And even if their contribution is 0.1% of the total, from God's point of view, it is still glorious. And it's a triumph to see it happen. So if you don't like God gooing all over somebody that is simply agitating as a goy, then he'll speak less of them if there's more people making a contribution. All right. Anyway, he says this is glorious. This word picture I'm painting for you now is glorious, and it works. It triumphs. That's better than working, right? It triumphs, and it's brought to you by the sea, which means it's coming from a goy. It agitates. What does this sea do when the waves come into the shore? It erodes all the rough edges and leaves the soft sand by breaking down all the roughness, smoothing things out, if you will. And so agitating by majestically raising an illustrious and reoccurring force. So first of all, God is sponsoring agitation. He's not passive. He's sponsoring agitation. He wants the surging of the sea. He's bringing this about. He says it's glorious. It's victorious. And then he says that the person that he is speaking of here, that he's drawing this word picture about, is illustrious and reoccurring. Well, that means that he's well known and he's been in and out of the picture before. Remember, I've said, well, we're going to start with Chinook, which would be Enoch. We can go to Medod during the Exodus. We've got Obed Edom and Ethan Ha Ezraki here. We've got the Ehelu, somebody that came to Dowd's rescue during the time that he was fulfilling Pesach, Matsah, and Matsah. And I was very, very thankful for it. And so God's got a guy that does this very thing. And while you may not think I do it very well, I think he has a fairly low bar, and that there's not a lot of humans that are willing to work with him. And so the very fact you're willing to work with him, I mean, that puts you up there in the top echelon, kind of 1 in a million sort of people, maybe 1 in a billion. So that's already a good deal here. But he's saying this person is well known and they're reoccurring and they're a force to reckon with. They're kind of bullish individual. They're from the West, and well, they can be abrasive, which is what God needs at this time. So it is Geuth Hayam, by the abrasion associated with the raging Westerner, serving as a metaphor for a boisterous and aggressive goy. By lifting up his rolling rocks, boy, this guy's got stones, among the turbulent waves as a witness. So God's saying that, water can be very effective at shaping the shore. And, you look at things like even water running through canyons, creating Grand Canyons and the like. Water can cut its swath and definitely smooth out the edges. But you want something that is associated with water that is really powerful. Have it pick up some rocks and have it stir them up and see what happens. And well, this last witness that he has is named Krog. It means sharp stone. And so he's having a field day with this. And he says, by lifting up his rolling rocks, his stones among the turbulent waves as a witness, by bearing his influential stones, raising his testimony, and demarking the boundaries of the agreement, all of these communicated by Gelem, and carrying the current of his relentless seas as foundations and as fountains, you laud and extol them. This is God again. Yeah, he is over the top. You can tell him that he's gone way too far and sharing credit and appreciating this man who is working with him in this way. But my guess is God will say, I'm his dad. He's my kid. And I'm proud of him. And so, just deal with it. You want to have more people that I will laud and extol, then we need more people to make a contribution, then, don't we? So it says, he says, you laud and extol them. He's actually speaking of this man's from the West, his stones, with exuberant statements, commending their value, eliminating, because what's going to happen is he eliminates the noise. He calms the chaos. He quiets the situation through them. We were also talking, we had quite the working lunch today. It was kind of a lot of different subjects, right? Yep. We talked about when Elia and I return, and how do we know that this soul that I have goes all the way back to Enoch. It's interesting that the two that were taken in that way are the two that will reappear. We talked about coming back with a different level of power, such that everybody that is opposed, everybody that's religious, conspiratorial, anti-Semitic, or political, militant, patriotic, is not going to like what we have to say. And we're going to be the most prominent spokespeople in the world. We're going to be right there on the Temple Mount. We're going to be speaking in every language, understand every language. We're going to have a tent of restoring witness behind us. We will have removed the Dome of the Rock and Alaska Mosque. We'll have a scroll above us that is positioned by Yahowah. Yahowah will have his Malak lift up the tablets of stone and point out things about them. And they will do everything they can to kill us. And it'll be just like, come on, got a nuclear bomb. What do you want to try? Let's try something else. I mean, that wasn't even irritating. And when we're involved in conversations and somebody just becomes annoying, hey, you can wink, you can snap your fingers, you can point, or not even do any of that. Just think them gone, and they're gone. I mean, just literally vaporized. So we're going to calm a lot of the noise. We're going to smooth out and eliminate the chaos that will be here. We're going to bring a sense of quiet to Jerusalem. So even before Yahowah eliminates all of those who have come, what we'll find is during that time we're here, while Israel will still be plundered by the Muslim terrorists, there'll be a quiet zone right around Jerusalem, a place where you'll be able to hear this message. And it's because of the way that Yahowah is going to assert himself factually through these stones and this surging Westerner, this aggressive Westerner that will quiet the situation. So people will be able to hear. So to appreciate Ethan's mashal, word picture, we must begin with the recognition that he is painting the future with words. In the first of them, Geuth is typically portrayed positively, even though it does have a dark side, like most Hebrew words. To be Geuth is to be glorious and majestic, with such high status that the individual is surrounded in splendor. God likes this guy. It is to be lifted up as illustrious, well known, and not infamous, but illustrious. It can convey the ideas of a raging and surging sea that is agitating and abrasive, the things that God likes. God is not looking for humble and modest and weak and those kinds of things. He likes agitating and abrasive. That's his style, particularly now. So when properly directed in the manner of the mashal, these are all good things. Even though Geuth can on occasion be rendered as pride, since the actual root is gara, to rise up effectively and grow productively, the positive aspects, and particularly in this concept of its etymology, well, they greatly outweigh the minor negatives. Therefore, Ethan is crediting Yahowah with painting a prophetic picture using ba Geuth hayam to say that a goy from the west, representing the roaring sea, will rise up from it and agitate the religious and political as he grows ever more productive and caressing those within the land who are receptive. He will surge forth in illustrious fashion, while noted for his abrasiveness and his assertiveness, being relentless like the constant banter of the waves upon the shore. Based upon God's story, as Hizraki has lived and experienced it through the millennia, this speaks, of course, of the Nakri, the observant foreigner, deployed by Yahowah to approach the land as a reoccurring force, with the ferocity to erode the stature of the rebellious when gently lapping at the feet of the responsive. One way or another, the sea will garner the attention of God's people who are residing within the land. Now, in this regard, there is only one goy, symbolic of the one coming out of the sea, who is slated to play a starring role in doing for Yisrael what he is currently accomplishing on behalf of Dowd, restoring the relationship. He is indeed Hanakri, the observant foreigner. He is Obed Edom, the one serving mankind, as the man from Edom, who Isaiah in the 63rd chapter tells us saves many in the end. He is Yadah, the one who, after restoring Yahweh's name, Dowd's reputation, prepares the mortal remnant of Yisrael for the king's return. So then in that follow-on statement, the second in that passage that I have just shared with you, it is Yahweh, who is Nasa, lifting up, bearing, and carrying the Galim, which is plural in this case. And this portrayal, Galim Hu, could mean all manner of things, from his rough waves to his boundary stones, marking territory, from his witness and testimony to his most impactful stones, even stormy seas which burst forth like fountains. And since Gal is from Gaal and means to roll or to move out of the way, this narrows the possibilities such that this relentless and often abrasive man from the West is going to be removing the trash, pulverizing it. It's a trash compactor of religious ideas. How about that? By using his Galim in this way, whether as roaring waves, stormy seas, boundary stones, witnesses to the agreement, or impactful rocks, the picture is that of the illustrious and formidable Goy being deployed with another, or such that he represents more than one of these metaphors. And by Nasha raising them up and bearing them, Yahweh is able to shabak him, laud and extol the result with exuberant statements, commending the value of bringing an end to the shrieking and to the chaos. It's quite a picture, isn't it? God's good at this. The rolling rocks in the surging waves of the sea will smooth the jagged shore for a better approach. And recognizing how hostile Jews have been towards Yahweh, this is sensible. Truth be known, at the moment, even Dowd was a little rough around the edges, and he needed some smoothing too, didn't he? And in this regard, there is a sense of showing restraint, which is really important, while remaining moral, all conveyed by Shabbat. And that's applicable in this situation with God, resolving his problem with Dowd and the religious prior to his return by working through this man and not making a scene. God can stay in heaven, as he said, until his people return to him, because he's deployed an agitator. We are aware that Dowd had more than his share of foes, and as did Israel. The most debilitating has been the Jewish propensity to be religious and political, rather than embrace the relationship that Yahweh intended. It is evident that Israel carted these attitudes out of Mitzrayim and never forsook them. Their downfall began with the golden calf, but then metastasized through the oral Torah and then the Talmud. Recognizing how prevalent religion and politics had become among Israelites, particularly in the wake of Sha'ul's demon possession and the impending Absalom coup against Dowd, it was important for Ethan to calm the raw nerves, to restore trust, and Yahweh's ability to subdue even the most prevalent threats to the covenant. And in this regard, since it's apparent that the previous attestation plays into this one, I'll bring them together, but this is going to be a cliffhanger, because we're going to a place I could not have imagined, and we're going to learn something about what's occurring today that will absolutely stimulate all the neurons in your mind. Now we're at a hour and 20 minutes at this point. My lovely wife gave me a reference. She says, Mizmowr 139 has another reference to the Golim. Okay, well, I'm pretty good at. I'm. You just hang there for a moment. Let me go find my Hebrew edition of Miz 139. I'll be right on that. You just stay put. I'll be back. Be back with you shortly. Thank you, Leah. Maybe we could have saved that for after the show, but that's okay. Well, now you know how we communicate. My wife does not, she always accuses me of not being able to keep a secret. The moment I know something, I'm going to share it with you. Well, look at her. She's, now I know it. Now you're going to know it. There you go. Well, thank you for listening. I enjoyed being able to deliver this information to you. I can assure you that our next program is going to open with a bang. You'll be amazed with what God has to say. And thank you for sticking with me through that last word picture. It was complicated, but I think the visuals now are something that you can appreciate and how Yahowah paints pictures with words. You have a great evening. We'll talk tomorrow. Goodbye.
Hey there, thanks for tuning in. That was Fetch. Gotta run now. Catch Yah on our next podcast.